So hi, can you tell me what's your name and a little bit about who you are and what you do about grief and death and dying?
Hi, my name is China Wu. I live in Sedona. I'm a grief specialist and also educator. Thanatology, actually, when you break it down, is like a science of death. So I'm always joking that I'm a death scientist. Thanatology is about the study of death and dying. So this master program that was actually started in Brooklyn College in New York in 1974. So the program's been there for a long time. However, I think in America it's only like two universities giving out this master program. So when I first encountered this program, I thought actually it's close to what I was doing that time because I just received to learn about Tibetan Buddhism. So Tibetan Buddhism is about emphasizing a lot about impermanent death and dying. And I thought, whoa, isn't it cool if I can have a degree so I can merge these two things together? I can create a career for myself. So in 2006, so I actually enrolled to the program. Literally, you know, later on, like really almost like immediately in the first semester, I actually find out that the program actually is for me. So the first class I took is called bereavement. So bereavement actually is talking about someone who experienced loss and how you reacting to loss and what loss could do to you. So in that class that we actually talk about somatic syndromes. The broken heart syndrome came up in the class and I said, oh my God, that happened to me in 1994. So apparently in 1994 that both of my parents died. You know, they both died 3 months apart. My mother died in May and my father died in August. And in October, I was hospitalized because I have a really severe chest pain. It was so painful that I cannot, you know, take a breath without having horrible pain. So end up, I was in the hospital. So they hospitalized me for 4 nights. Nothing really, they found out, nothing at all. They just give me test over test, and there's nothing really substantial they can discover or diagnose me. And then later on that I realized it's not going to help me, you know. Public hospital is scary in Hong Kong, you know. People will be screaming at night and people will see things and it's really disturbing. And I said, you know what, I told my siblings, I need to get out, you know. So I get out. So that takes me about a few months to recover back to normal. Then all these years just go by. I don't know what's happening. I thought, Dad just died. I just moved in with him and he died suddenly. And now I have chest pain. So my mind was thinking, I wonder is something toxic in the house. It's like, Dad just died, you know, and then I have just chest pain. But anyway, so for many years, and I don't know why, you know, this is happening to me. And then until 2006, when I enrolled to the, you know, Thanatology program, the first class, bereavement, broken heart syndrome, ding! It's like my light bulb is like, oh my God, that's exactly what happened to me. So this is so crazy. So because of that, I realized how little like knowledge that we have, not only for me as a person who's in the early 20s when that happened, but also the medical community. And then when I was in school in 2006, the article came up from Johns Hopkins University. They're the ones who wrote about the broken heart syndrome in 2005. So what happened to me was 1994. So really in 1994 to 2005, I don't know anyone was really discovered that such things or even write about something is called broken heart syndromes. So to me it's like a revolutionary. It's like, wow, that's amazing. So I finally discovered my mysterious pain. And also I realized it, oh my God, that's what grief could do to you. Somatic syndrome is like, for example, if you go through a traumatic experience, it doesn't have to be death and dying. It could be like you witness a horrible car accident, or you saw a building collapse, or like you went through a earthquake zone like that. So so when you go through stuff like that, it's kind of shock in your body, right? And you throw your normality off the window. So your body, if you don't have someone to talk to, or like, we all need debriefing, like it's like, oh, if something happened to you, first thing, I'm going to call my husband and tell to him about it. But not everybody have that person to talk to. Or it's not everybody have the habit of talking about their problems too, depends on the way that you grow up. For example, children, they don't know how to express themselves. So somatic syndromes actually happen a lot to kids, when they witness something happen, or like be in an environment that the parents fighting a lot, or one of the parents gone, or in jail, or incarcerated, or die. So kids a lot of time have somatic syndromes. For example, what will happen to them, they may have stomach ache, they couldn't sleep at night, or they're sleeping too much, or maybe they will regressing back to, they would wet the bed, and that is a regression, for kids. As adult, like me, I have chest pain, and that I think was a very extreme case. Like for example, when my parents died within 3 months, I didn't know that was traumatic. It is traumatic, but we don't have the vocabulary or like diagnose, I just thought, okay, it's my life, that's what happened. But then I had this chest pain for so many years that I don't even know what was it until I went to school to discover that that's called broken heart syndromes. So that is one of the good, vivid example about somatic syndromes. So that means that when you're not able to express it emotionally, or share with someone, or vent, or like you have so much anger, you have so much, and eventually it will just internalize and you get sick, and that's what happened. I think things could be better for me if, first of all, it's very significant. Because my somatic syndrome came out right after my father's death. My mom died in May, Dad died in August, 3 months. And in October, 2 months later, I have somatic syndromes. I went to hospital. What if the doctor would ask me, so would you mind telling me what happened to your life lately? Because you're so young, you're 22. A heart attack or like heart pain, chest pain shouldn't be happening to you, what happened to your life? If they have asked me that, then I will tell them, oh yeah, recently, I moved in with my dad because my mom died and he died suddenly and I discovered his body. And then if they have asked me that question, then they pretty much could be immediately thinking, oh, okay, that's the reason for the pain, the reason for this body stress, or maybe that's a reason for someone to have depression, like someone who's depressed, and they go to the doctor. They go to, okay, you're depressed, I'll just give you the pill, without even asking, anything happened to you, recently or something. Especially grief could really looks like depression sometimes, but it's different kind of depression. So actually Freud, he wrote a paper about that. The depression came up from grief, and the chronic depressions, like clinically, like your chemical imbalance, is totally two different things. So lots of time, people don't understand, and then they mix them as it, and then they prescribe a person antidepressant. That's not working, because when someone's grieving, yeah, their world is shattered, they lost a loved one, of course they're feeling sad, but the depression has a reason for it. There's a root to go after, not like someone who has no pre-existing trauma or like stress in the environment or like emotionally. So maybe they really do diagnose with chemical imbalance within the body, then they need to take pills, So I think it's a very important for an individual like ourselves to understand what grief actually do to you, and also go to someone who really trained to understand what's grief. Unfortunately, a lot of time you just go to the doctor, you tell them you're depressed or whatever, they more likely will suggest that you take on antidepressants. Including nowadays, they talk about grief that if prolonging after 3 months or 6 months, and then they will try to diagnose them as a complicated grief, and then they will give you antidepressants, and that's really wrong. I think we all need to work through our pain, and it's like a process of it. I mean, it's not like a steps you will go through, because everybody have different experience, and every circumstances, every death, every relationship with the person who died could have different outcome of our grieving. Like for example, my grandmother died, she was 98 years old. I didn't grieve her much. I didn't really cry too much either, because we have such a beautiful life together. I really, treasure her. The last time I saw her, that we have a meaningful conversation. She even know that probably the last time she saw me in Hong Kong, she even took out her ring, from her finger, telling me that this is from your grandfather, I want you to have it. Because we really treasure each moment that we spend together. So when she died, actually I didn't really grieve, I really feel like, wow, my grandma lived till 98, is pretty incredible. And to the point that my parents and my father died, or even my best friend who committed suicide and died, all the grief is so different between each person, each circumstances, how the person died, and what happened around them. So I think once you understand that, you will know how to take care of yourself better. As a grief specialist and an educator, I would think that it's very important to understand grief is not a mental illness. It is a community health. Even my degree was under community health. It's nothing to do with mental illness, I think it really depends on the culture. For example, in a lot of culture, like especially the Chinese or the Buddhist culture, we have a very elaborate ritual. So I think it's because the ritual is also helping us to mourn the person. So in terms of that, the grief will be like lessened quicker, I think, compared to the people who came from a culture that have nothing, no ritual, nothing at all. So for example, we have this like 7 times 7, 7 weeks times 7 days, 49 days. Actually, in the Buddhism culture is the mourning period. And then we also believing within these 49 days, the soul will journey through different days, and by the 49 days, the soul will be reincarnated. So we grown up have concept like that, and also we have a lot of ritual. For example, we will light a candle for them, for the person who passed away every day for 49 days. So by doing that gesture itself, it's really helping you to mourn the person. And also you really giving this time to meet this person, to cry, to even having some live review, thinking about all the good things and bad things, and you really need to going through this process. Instead, I think a lot of time now in the modern world, we only have like 3 or 4 days bereavement leave at work. Like even though you lost your mom or dad, you have to go back to work in 4 days. And then you have to expecting to be able to perform like a normal person. You cannot, honestly, because grief could really like impact you in a multidimensional level. So for example, health-wise, physically you might go through really difficult time, including like you get really, really tired. You might have somatic syndromes that you have a dryness in your mouth, and your chest could be very tight, and also you have a difficult breathing, and that's the symptoms of physically. And socially, you might have some support for a few days or like a week, and then suddenly everybody disappear. And then I don't know to you, but there's some people always complain to me their friends stop calling them, or like if they lost a spouse. Not surprisingly, sometimes the widow we lost the social life also. Because people normally would go out together as a couple, and suddenly you become a widow and people feel so uncomfortable around you. They might not invite you to the same place that, the same thing that you used to go. So you feel very isolated. And also, if the death was really traumatic, can you imagine something like a murder? Some horrible things happen to a good person, and happen that this person very religious. Sometimes people be really angry of God and say, how come God could do that, And then that, in terms that we call this scenario as spiritual injury. So in that aspect, and also if someone who died violently, or from a crime or whatever, and suddenly your security becomes threatening. You're even afraid to go out, your house, or so. Death and grief actually could have a huge impact on you, especially if someone who, for example, a housewife, normally her husband taking care of everything, including how to pump a gas in the car. It's not surprising some women don't even know how to pump a gas or even write a check. So how are you going to do that? How are you going to, expecting your life going to be normal? So I think one thing is people have to acknowledge that there's no such thing as normal again, because your life will be forever changed. I think from that point on, you need to realize that, okay, my life is not going to be the same. But doesn't mean that I cannot continue to live well. It might take a while, but also I always tell my clients, let's think of grief as an invitation for you to know about yourself again, to recover who you are. Because a lot of time that when we go through grief, we not only lost the person that we love, like for example, I lost my parents, but the truth is part of me is also gone. So who am I now? When I lost my parents, I don't have a home to go to. I don't have reference to go back to. Maybe they will hold all these great memories about me when I was a child. Say, hey, do you remember when I was a child how I encounter things? But I have no one to ask now. So you also lost some memories of yourself, and then part of yourself being lost too. So I always encourage people, grief a lot of time, not only like sometimes. I think I can guarantee 100% lots of time. You're not only grieving for the person you lost, you're also grieving for yourself. So I think in particularly when you're facing grief, you have to be especially kind to yourself. Also, really is opportunity for you to learn about who you really are. If you don't, maybe you will go through a journey to starting to rediscover yourself. I think that's very important. So I would encourage that if you're in grief right now, knowing that there's always a place that you will find peace again. I know it's difficult. Some days you just don't want to get off the bed. It's almost like it's impossible to even just wake up and brush your teeth. But just remember that everything's impermanent, including your sadness, including your pain. Same as the happiness, So once you remember that, just be patient with yourself. Things will pass. Eventually, you're going to feel better. You're going to get your strength back. You're going to re-enter the world again. And that's hope.